Hey everyone, and welcome to Milo Game Reviews, where we review games both new and old on all platforms. My name is Milo, and if you like the content that I make, then please subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a review when it comes out. Today I want to talk about the recently released game Mafia The Old Country. I have a bit of a history with the Mafia franchise. Back in high school, I had a close friend who recommended me to check out Mafia 1 on the PC. It was one of the best stories he had ever played in a video game, and that definitely piqued my interest. I remember that it was a little hard to come by as the game was about 4 or 5 years old at the time, but I eventually found it through an online PC store and got to experience it. I remember being impressed with the atmosphere and vibe, and also the more realistic take than GTA, as you had to properly adhere to the speed limits and stop for red lights in order to avoid getting in trouble with the police. But much of the game also felt very dated and clunky, like the controls and the driving itself. The real important part in the Mafia franchise was Mafia 2, which stands as my favorite in the series. This is an incredible story combined with awesome action set pieces and that perfect gangster and mafia vibe we know and love from the movies. I hope to someday also review Mafia 2 and the other games in the series. Mafia 3 I never played, but I hope to tackle that too in the future. For now, we go all the way back to the beginning with Mafia The Old Country, as this is a prequel to the entire series that tells the story of the rivalry between the family of Don Sporado and Don Torisi. You play as Enzo, a young mine worker who does backbreaking work in a dangerous sulfur mine in Sicily. One day, something dramatic happens and Enzo flees the mine and gets recruited into the ranks of the Don Torisi family. From the moment you play the game, it becomes apparent that the vibe and atmosphere are once again on point with this game. The environments are vast, colorful, and detailed. The characters are interesting and greatly cast. Just in the way that Don Torisi talks can you hear how much attention the developers put into nailing that mafia vibe. Also, other characters like the mentor figure Luca, the overconfident Cesare, and the charming Isabella are all great and believable. Now, you start at the bottom of the barrel with chores like moving crates of wine or cleaning up after the horses. The intro of this game is slow, and I mean really slow. Now, the intros of Mafia 1 and 2 are also somewhat slow, but are nothing compared to how slow Mafia The Old Country is. Mafia 2 actually starts out rather action-packed with a segment in World War II, after which it takes a few steps back and also has you do a few mundane jobs before things heat up. And Mafia 1 also starts with a chase sequence and then has you working regular taxi shifts before starting with a few mundane missions here and there. In the first 2 hours of playing Mafia The Old Country, I believe there was only one time when there was a shootout that I had. The other times were stealth sections, knife fights, horse races, and lots of segments where you would either walk or be on a horse and take in the atmosphere and story. There's so much walking around and talking that it sometimes feels a bit like an old school adventure game. Now, the atmosphere and story are great, but I was surprised that I noticed how slow it all felt. Just to be sure, I played through the first 3 hours of Mafia Definitive Edition again, and there too you only have 1 or 2 shootouts within the first 2 hours. You do a lot of driving, fist fighting, racing, and a little bit of stealth. And that actually did not feel slow at all. And I cannot really put my finger on it, but I think it might have to do with the setting that was just more my thing in the earlier Mafia games. I've come to realize that I prefer the gangsters and the mafia stories in the 1930s and the 40s in New York and Chicago rather than the stories in the countryside of Sicily. But even so, it was still very interesting to traverse this gorgeous map and see all the small towns and beautiful landscapes. Old Country is definitely the most detailed Mafia yet, with so many different NPCs doing different and unique animations. You can really soak it all in and take your time as you see all the small details that the game has to offer. You stay at a vineyard, so when you walk around, you see the workers crush the grapes into juice with their bare feet. You can see the nonnas prepare food and tomato paste. You can see the elderly play some cards or other games, and also guards patrolling that occasionally enjoy a smoke break. The world feels alive and designed with care in mind. And despite it being an open world where you can drive and walk to anywhere you like, it does not play like most other open world games in that there are no activities to do in that world besides just the main story. And I think that is fine. I might even prefer it that way. The first time they did this with Mafia 2, because even Mafia 1 had a few side things you could do here and there, and I remember how many reviewers back then criticized the game for having an open world without anything to do in it. But I'm really getting tired of open world games that offer side activities that are all the same, like finding collectibles or do races or side missions like food deliveries or taxi services. These are things that might be fun for 1 or 2 times, but get really repetitive afterwards, and is something I don't particularly enjoy in my open world games. I'm not going to spend a few hours just doing food delivery missions in something like GTA or other open city games. Exceptions for this are maybe games like Yakuza that have a lot of side activities and some are actually pretty boring, but some are also really deep and enjoyable. And the more recent GTA games actually has some proper depth to the side activities you can do. Now, in my opinion, an open world can simply act as a believable decor that functions as the background for everything that occurs in the story. It is indeed a better alternative than linear levels, where you cannot go off the beaten path, and helps with the immersion factor. So I like the open world of Mafia The Old Country, and I think the gameplay loop is fine too. It often comes down to what you are used to with these type of games. Most of the time, you first drive to a specific location, then have a cutscene, and then you have a shootout or stealth section, often followed by a shootout or a knife fight. Now here actually is something that I think the game does a bit worse than the other Mafia games, and that is its strong emphasis on stealth. Many missions will have you infiltrate a certain place, like an enemy camp, a factory, or a mansion. You have to sneak in and not be seen by the enemy. There are some times where you can still fight your way out if you are spotted, and others that immediately fail the mission when you are seen. The stealth mechanics are very standard, and is something that I've played a billion times over in other games. You snap to cover and wait for enemies to patrol, and then they awkwardly stand somewhere still in the corner with their backs turned to you, and you walk up, press a button, do a quick time event, and then can hide the body in tall grass or a large box nearby. We have seen this stealth in Indiana Jones, Star Wars Outlaws, in The Last of Us, Sniper Elite, and Plague Tale, and it's all the exact same. Literally. Like, I believe that the stealth system in Old Country is as good or as bad, you can pick which one, as all those other games. Now, this is not necessarily the fault of Mafia The Old Country, but playing it made me realize how much stealth in video games has stagnated for a very long time, and how boring of a gameplay mechanic I actually think it is because I've experienced it so many times. I used to love stealth games like Metal Gear Solid or Splinter Cell, but stealth there felt different compared to how it is handled nowadays. We still have the thing where enemies 2 feet nearby cannot hear you stealth kill a different enemy, or the trick of throwing a coin somewhere to lure the enemy to a certain place. And despite the fact that in some scenarios you can also just go in guns blazing from the start, it is still encouraged to take the stealth approach and is present much more than in the other Mafia games. Again, I played through the first 3 hours of Mafia Definitive Edition, and in those 3 hours there are only 2 stealth sections that literally only last 1 or 2 minutes. It is just present for too many parts in the Old Country, and even the very final boss is a fight that literally revolves around stealth. Many missions also end up with a boss fight where you have to take down someone with a knife. I think literally every major character gets confronted in this way, and the first 2 or 3 times it is fun and exciting, but then it simply gets to be formulaic. It unironically becomes rather hilarious that you two pull out a knife each time, and you can see those moments coming from far away. It unfortunately results in missions becoming repetitive and predictable. In the other Mafia games, you also do a lot of the same things in the form of shootouts and car chases. But there the variety comes in the form of the locations, as you are fighting in Chinatown in one mission, then at a brothel in the next, and even a church and a farm outside the city. Now that does not mean that Old Country does not have great set pieces and missions, as there are some that really stand out, like a mission where you are pinned down by a sniper in a town on a wedding day for a certain character, or fighting in a large and luxurious mansion. But these moments are sprinkled throughout the more familiar mission structures. Mafia The Old Country does nothing bad, but it also does nothing great either. It's a game that is good for those who love traditional single-player games and story. The vibe and atmosphere is amazing in this game, and it is for those who want to experience a greasy, gritty soap opera in the Sicilian countryside. The story in and of itself is rather cliché, but that is okay. That is what many of us want, since we are familiar with this setting and tone from the movies and from the TV shows, so we want what we see there. Also, the love story between Enzo and Isabella was done quite well and not as cringe or predictable as I thought. It is once again one of those impossible love stories, as a regular farm helper, of course, is not allowed to fall in love with the daughter of the Don himself. The story did not end up where I thought it would, and there were some nice twists and turns here. The last 3 to 4 hours of the campaign are quite dramatic, with many things happening, and that is where the pace picks up. I think the game is fairly priced, and a great addition to the Mafia series, and a good starting point for those who want to get into the franchise. But I do think Mafia 1 and 2 are both better, as they have better pacing, better gameplay with less stealth, and for me personally, a better setting with the cities in the 30s and 40s. In the end, Mafia The Old Country gets a 7.7. If there was less emphasis on the stealth and repetitive nature of the knife fights, I think I would have given it a higher score. I am glad in a way that this game was made in the way it did, to where it was simply a single player game that offered that traditional way of telling its story campaign. I am so tired of every company wanting to make the same type of open world game, and this is simply how the earlier Mafia games were made, with some gameplay tweaks here and there. And now that we have reviewed The Old Country, I cannot wait to go and review the next ones in the Mafia series.